Sound? Sound? There should be sound.
Are you hearing us?
Everybody? Okay, all right.
Good.
Cannot hear you. I don't like the sound of that. All right, we're talking. Everything's unmuted. You should be okay. Thank you for telling us that you could not hear us. And now thank you for telling us that you can hear us. Everything that we said before we were unmuted was the most important stuff, and we will not be repeating any of it. So you're welcome. So happy Friday, everyone. Steve, cheers, my friend.
Yo, we made
Yes.
it again by the skin of our skinny little asses.
Now, here's the best part, guys. I think it'll be a better show because we figured out how to get the chat up on the screen in front of us. So the past few shows, if it's felt like we haven't been interacting, it's because we haven't been, because we couldn't see you the whole time. So now we can see your wonderful chatty text voices. We see people talking about what they're drinking.
What are you drinking?
What am I drinking? I raided your liquor cabinet, Steve. You no longer have any blackened. This is the end.
Oh, you cleaned up the blackened?
This is the end.
You cad.
The Metallica whiskey.
All right.
And I haven't had it yet, so I'm excited. Let's try.
Well, wait. I got my 1154, 47, 1140, whatever the hell it is.
Your 1176.
Yeah, my 1176 margarita. Cheers. Happy Friday.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yes, Amanda, you can read you now. The volume is going up and down. I'm cutting in and out. You don't need to hear me anyway. That's not good.
It might just be a connector issue. Give me that.
Testing.
I think you cut out last show a little bit.
Testing.
Can you hear Joe okay?
Can you hear me okay? Am I cutting out still? Amanda, am I cutting out? You're hearing me through Steve's mic? Okay. Sounds good? Okay. Klaus, we're going to totally get to that. Actually,
when you guys, Joe talking sideways, head sideways, voice going.
Oh, interesting.
So your mic position is directional. These are very directional. These new mics are more directional, which means they sound better in the right position and they sort of disappear when you turn sideways.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, we're still novices.
Yeah. So
rookies.
There's
bozos.
Bugs everywhere. And of course, we can't just do a show the same way 5 times in a row and finally get it all debugged. We do a show, find that there's bugs, change the format, get new equipment, not necessarily find all the bugs and add new ones to find. And eventually, I mean, this is part of what the show is about now, just like being idiots, not anticipating the idea that things could go wrong. Why don't you make it easier on yourself? Well, it just doesn't work that way here.
This is not the Malcontents.
It ain't the Malcontents way.
It's it's a marathon.
Yeah. It's you get on a tightrope, the margarita in this hand, a balance pole in this hand, a southwesterly big gust of wind blowing up, and you forgot to put the air in the tires on the bicycle that you're sitting on, and hope for the best.
Thanks, Amanda. Mark said that you're Jim. That's funny. Yeah. Are the bugs fun? I'm glad. I'm glad our unprofessionalism is your comedic relief. So is Steve's mic worse? I just want to get into a mode where I can stop thinking about this. All right.
I noticed the last show, mine was fine until Erica waved to me and she said she thought she heard my microphone sound change, but it changed because I turned right or left.
Okay.
So and I was making the big stupid face.
Yeah. Okay.
What? And
I always make a big stupid face. I can't help it. It's just my face.
well, at least you don't have a stupid hangover face today.
I'll have that tomorrow morning if we do it right. Now it sounds like Steve is being picked up by a room mic.
That means that my mic probably goes in and out, and when mine goes out, you're hearing me through Joe's mic.
This is good technology. It is. I'm assuming there is a Get Smart cone of silence. I don't know what that is exactly. You know what that is?
No, and here's what else I know. I know that we're not going to debug the show tonight, so I'm going to stop thinking about it.
So if it sounds like crap, it sounds like crap, and you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit.
It's going to just, like Skull says, it's good and it's not good, and so it's just going to be good until it isn't, and then it'll be good again. So
and you get what you pay for, right?
Enough of that nonsense. By the way, no thanks to Sennheiser. The lavalier mics, the first lavalier mics we had, the infamous ones that had the 3-hour battery life that lasted 30 minutes, 40 minutes. The first time we used the lavalier mics on the first episode of season 2. So we bought them through Amazon. We figured out that they weren't defective the 30th day that we had the window to return them. So they wouldn't let us return them. So I contacted Sennheiser. Will you guys help us out? These aren't working right, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it took a month to get through to Sennheiser to get a response. They finally responded and said, yeah, give us a sales receipt. Give them the sales receipt. And they went, oh, yeah, that was a non-authorized seller. You're going to have to return it to them. Can't return it to them because not only were we on the last day of the return, but now it's 30 days later because that's how long it took for you to get back to us. So why don't we just send them to you and you can fix them since you admit that the batteries are defective and need to be replaced. And they didn't respond at all. So the Sennheiser mics that we bought, the wireless system that we bought, is going in the garbage. And so don't buy the Sennheiser little wireless receiver and transmitter set.
It's a Sennheiser embargo. Jim, you're not totally showing your age. I know what the show is. I just didn't know what the cone of silence is. And who Get Smart? Who's the star? I see his face.
Yeah.
The Get Smart guy. I mean, that's his role, right? Anyway, somebody will chime in with it.
Yeah, the first name that comes to my mind is Don Knotts, and it's not him.
No. Hey, what's up, Wayne? The mics are crazy directional. That's what it sounds like.
Don Adams. Thank you very much.
Whoa, you guys need to high five. BMO and John, like it was at the same exact second.
Yeah, well, the cone of silence was this plastic cone that dropped down from the ceiling, and Smart and his superior were talking, and when they didn't want anybody here, the cone of silence would come down over their heads, and they would talk with this plastic cone over their head, but you could hear everything they were saying because there was nothing in it that was sound canceling or anything like that.
It's like when little kids go, "You can't see me."
Yeah.
You can't see me.
Yeah, I think the Get Smart series, they I think they either created or made famous that don't tell me that we're being followed by a big red truck. You're being followed by a big red truck. I asked you not to tell me that.
Yeah.
They pioneered that
Ah.
shtick that went through the entire series of the show.
Well,
Oh, they couldn't hear each other inside the cone of silence. It worked in reverse. That was the shtick.
oh, I think it's kind of funny that everybody can hear them.
People could hear
And
them outside of the cone, but they couldn't hear each other inside.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's
Yeah, well. So, how was your week, Steve? Mine was a great big pile of stuff.
how was my week? Every day now since the entire New World Order landed upon us 2 weeks ago, no matter how fucked up or stressful or overworked or impossible to get everything that needs to be done day that I have, I thank my fucking lucky stars that I can at least accomplish that much. And watching what's going on in the world is just, I have this period where I'm just dumbfounded, cannot believe that what is going on right now is going on. And then the next minute, Joe sends me a draft of the video that he's going to post live. And I feel like I'm back in the joyous, safe cocoon of creation of music and enjoyment of music. And I feel insulated from the outside world for that moment in time. And that last video that you just did that you went live with today was an example of that. It was just, maybe you did it last night. I forget. Did it go? No, it went live today, right?
The little teaser for tonight? That was yesterday, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it was yesterday. And I was just like, wow, listen to that tone, listen to the sound, the musical composition. And I went to bed and sat up in my bed with my iPhone and my wireless earbuds and listened to that and just was in awe of it. And then I made the mistake of going on Twitter.
Oh my God.
Because
Twitter is bizarre world right
I
now.
do follow 3 or 4 really credible, informed, intelligent sources to really get a sense of what's going on over there. And so I feel like I'm getting good information. I'm not being fed nonsense. I'm not being fed fake news.
That's funny because I'm not following on Twitter. I'm not following any U.S. sources for what's
I'm not
going
either.
on over there. It's just like, I'm out, man. It's such a mess over
here. Yeah. So,
but for me with Twitter right now, it's like the juxtaposition. My Twitter is basically following shit about my favorite sports teams. And then the reality of what's going on in the world. And it's like one completely superfluous tweet that you're like, my team is, well, so I'm a Denver Broncos fan. And if you're an NFL fan, you know that there's some kind of big news going on this week. And it's like, yay, that's all fun stuff in peacetime. But you see a tweet about that, and then the next thing is from someone from Ukraine, and it's just brutal. And it's hard to enjoy those little things. But I'm glad my clip made you happy for a moment.
It was thrilling. It was thrilling. And and by the way, if you look at, we posted a little 3-minute clip of Sumac playing live in LA the other night. And so a couple of us went down and watched them. And boy, was that a soul cleanser. It was.
So literally that show is a block and a half from my apartment. And I didn't know that they were playing.
Yeah,
you were there.
Well, I wasn't 100% sure where it was until we got there because I'd never
The
been to that venue
Echoplex is
before.
literally a block and a half away from me.
And we got there and I went, I thought it was something, I thought it was way over in Glendale. So we got there and I went, it was like 10:45, 11 o'clock when they went on. When we got there, I went, is this the right place? And you couldn't see it from the street because it was kind of back off the street. And we kind of figured out, oh, okay, we're here.
Yeah.
And then I looked around and went, holy shit, Joel lives a block away from here. But
Yeah.
But it's almost midnight. I wasn't going to call you.
Like Steve told me about it the next day, and I went, "Are you kidding me?" Because this is stupid, but whatever. I was out walking to get dinner, and I bumped into this couple, and they're kind of walking around, going, and I said, "Hey, can I help you guys?" Yeah. Can you tell us where the Echoplex is? Yeah, it's right across the street here. I should have said, "Who's playing tonight? Who are you guys going to see?" They were going to see the same show you were.
It's so bad.
And Sumac is like, killing man.
I didn't think that you would want me to call you at 11 o'clock at night, so I didn't call.
You can call me at 3 in the morning.
All right.
I'm that kind of a dork.
From now on,
I don't care.
yeah. Anyway, you should have seen that, but it was a excellent show.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for the compliments. Oh, that's a cool thought, Amanda. That's true. That's true. You know, that sentiment that you're kind of conveying it's interesting because those of us who do music and art related things or make products that are bought through discretionary income, it can feel in times like this like it's really unimportant, right? And that's something that's difficult, having chosen music to be my vocation, is when things are going well, it's a lot of fun. But when everything's falling down around you, sometimes it feels like I made the wrong choice, because you can't like jump in and do something direct. So it is nice to hear people remind you that, the icing actually does count. The things that, like this. Is this essential? No, but it makes things go down a lot easier. It makes life worth living, these little small pleasures.
Well,
right.
I have friends in Ukraine. I have people we've done business with in Ukraine. I have friends in Russia. I have people that we do business with in Russia. It's crushing because my heart is with Ukraine. But I also understand and accept that the people that I deal with and that are my friends in Russia are the people that I deal with and my friends. They're not the problem.
They're not invading.
They're not the ones doing the crazy shit.
Right.
They're the one in a country run by somebody else that's doing the crazy shit. And they don't have any sway over that. So, it's difficult to separate all that because, you have friends and allegiances and then you have absolute insanity juxtaposed over the top of all that. And it's insane.
Yeah.
So, and we had been communicating with our tube supplier, and we use a lot of tubes that are manufactured in Russia. And well, now we use everything. We use every tube that we can get from every supplier wherever they are, and every distributor wherever they are. That was going on before this happened. That was going on as a result of COVID, as a result of the supply chain.
It had already been rough.
It had already been insane, and it's it really drove home the nature of the supply chain, how basically limited it is, and the people that are producing these tubes are producing everything that they can produce, and all of us tube amplifier companies are absorbing all of that product. And we don't really have a sense of how much they're producing or what their capacity to produce is or the capacity to increase production is. We don't know. A lot of the reason we don't know is because they
don't know.
They don't know. Or they tell us that they can, but they can't, or they tell us they can't when they can.
Well, they've got to put the face on, right?
Yeah, and
You know?
it's the information is unreliable, and anybody, not just me, anybody will tell you, no matter how long they've been in this business making tube amplifiers, and we've been doing it for over 32, and I was doing it for 10 years before officially doing it as a profession. So in all of that time, I've never gotten a straight story from anybody about what's happening in supply. So when I started getting into being one of the consumers,
There's never been a more
of a quantity of tubes for repairs or production or resell to other people, there's never been a time in all of my time involved in this industry where anybody ever gave me a straight story about what's happening.
There's never been a more wretched hive of scum and villainy than the tube procurement business. Okay, exaggeration. I just had to drop a Star Wars quote in. Couldn't help myself.
But it's always been like that. When the U.S. tube manufacturing was shutting down, you couldn't get the straight story. Why? Because whoever was shutting down didn't want you to know they were shutting down. They were telling you,
Right.
"Oh yeah, no, we're
Right,
producing
right,
tubes
right.
all day long. No problem."
Right. How about Fry Electronics here? So I'm drinking. This is good. Non sequitur. But Fry Electronics, I don't know. I mean, they're in California. I don't know where else they are. But for like 2 years, they were running that line.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just restocking. Like your entire warehouse store.
You're in a
everywhere is
100,000,
empty.
250,000 square foot store that's 3/4 empty,
You're going out of business.
and your
lying.
customers walk in the door and you go, "Oh yeah, the restocking guys will be here at midnight to like fill all the shelves. Everything will be in stock by
Bullshit.
Monday."
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a week later, you drive by there, it's completely shut down. All the doors are.
And it was that way for a year and a half.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
Oh no. We're not going out of business.
when VHT first started, the 2150 was designed to use 6550s. Okay, fun fact. The 2150 was not originally designed to be a high-end specialist boutique amp. It was designed to be a budget amp.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, I like this story.
It was designed to be an affordable, well-built, mass-produced amplifier.
Really?
Yeah. And what happened? Well, a couple things. I was green as a manufacturer.
Okay.
So I didn't properly assess where the line was between spending not enough on materials and design and spending too much on materials and design.
It's kind of common.
So that was an undefined and to me undefinable sort of boundary line.
Sure.
That was one.
And you don't know until you.
Yeah. Number two, I didn't really know how to calculate profit, so I figured you buy parts, you put labor time into it, and then you add all that up, and then put a percentage on top of it, and that's your profit, and away you go. And
okay, can I stop you?
yeah, you can stop me.
So that sounds reasonable to me.
Okay.
What is the actual calculus behind it?
Didn't know at the time.
But what is it? So if that is the naive version, what is the more like now? How would you quantify it? It's that.
Well, now what I would do is I would make the calculation that at what price does this product have velocity in the marketplace?
Huh.
Okay.
Okay.
And then at that price, is the velocity sufficient to get over the minimum order quantities I would have to buy to achieve that price? In other words, if I made one, it cost me $200 to make. If I make 10, it costs me $150. If I make 1,000, it costs me $100.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have to calculate the velocity. I have to calculate the availability of parts and the shipping cost of all of that stuff, and then I have to factor in the overhead of the company. How much do we spend every month on overhead, employees, rent, insurance?
That's a longer equation.
That's an equation that you don't make building shit out of your bedroom.
Right. But this is interesting. You guys I know will totally agree with me on this. When you were starting, I wouldn't say that you were doing it as a vanity project, but the things that you've been doing over the last decade, percentage-wise, probably 75%. When you're thinking about that velocity in the marketplace, you're not putting things out because, I want to make an amplifier that's cool. You are putting things into the marketplace that are there to specifically solve issues that we all have. And I think that's why, you've been going through this renaissance.
Well, that
Power
renaissance
station,
started.
GLIR,
Yeah.
GPDI. These are things that
that renaissance actually became apparent around 2012, but we were actually thinking about it between 2008 and 2010, and that occurred because I made a mission statement.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we sat down after going through trials and tribulations and went, okay, what is the one thing that we really need to change? And the thing was
I love this stuff.
The thing that we needed to change was to go from just building something based on my intuition and establish a framework around why we would make any product and what it was and what.
Okay, when you say intuition,
yeah,
could that be synonymous with just whatever the hell I want to make? Like this is what I'm jonesing for and it's cool, so I want to make it. And you're going, okay, I can't just do that anymore.
Well, but see, that's the whole part of making a mission statement is that you take those things and go, which one of these? How do I define this?
Yeah. I love this.
So the way we fleshed all that out and talked our way through it, was to bounce the ideas back and forth and take those kinds of questions and reduce them down to a mission statement or a focus or a vision. And then what we finally came up with was that there was 2 or 3 characteristics that a product had to have in order to justify going into production. First of all, even thinking about designing it, then producing it and putting it in production. But at the very beginning of it had to be conceptualized, and that conceptualization had to be based on some principles. And the first principle was, does it have a reason to exist?
Yes. That's my favorite one.
That's principle number 1.
Absolutely.
Then the next principle would
not
be,
just because I think it's cool, not just because I want to see something in the marketplace with my name on it. Like I have to think that way about music.
Does it solve somebody's problem? Is it an idea?
Because it's offensive to put something out there that just contributes to the white noise in the marketplace.
That's right. It is offensive.
It is offensive.
Because you see offensive products out there that are.
Why is that out there?
They're aimed at the lowest common denominator. They're another manufacturer taking it's just like in the record industry. As soon as Nirvana comes out, the record industry goes out and looks for 50 other Nirvanas. Right. They looked like they went out looking for 50 other Beatles. They went out and looked for 50 other,
But it's shining a spotlight on. I have such a small aperture into life. I saw things out there that I thought were cool. I wanted to have my name out there too. And so I went and did it, and I didn't consider at all what else is going on in the world.
Well, we knew that we had something going on when the 2150 came out. How did we know?
Mhm.
4 other companies copied the 2150.
Oh, there's some good feedback.
Let's see who copied the 2150. Seymour Duncan. Let's see. There was a company called shoot, I can't even remember the name.
Well, Peavy totally snagged the resonance and like the power amp
Yeah.
tailoring aspect.
What was it? Rockmod? Kasha. Kasha was the second one. And then there was another company called Elan. And then there was another company.
I love how you fearlessly call them out.
Why not?
Cheers to that.
Hey, they fearlessly
Ganked your stuff.
booked a NAMM booth right across the aisle from us and put their product right in front of their booth.
Oh, fuck off.
And looked at us like, oh shit, we didn't realize that we were across the booth from VHT. And so when somebody would come to our booth and go, that's a great power amp, it's a little expensive for my budget, but it sounds really great. Well, you know what? You can get a badly built one that's a copy right across the way. And they would look at me and look at, that's a copy of your thing? I said, well, it's a crappy copy, but it's a copy and it's cheaper if you're looking to save money. And they would go over there. Hey, those guys say that you make a lower cost, cheaper quality copy of their power amp. And they go, oh, ours is just as good as theirs. And I would listen to this and go, how is it as good as ours? Is it good as ours based on you did the best job of copying our product that you could do? Is that what made it really? We had a lot of fun with that.
Wow.
I actually went into Kasha's Joey Brasler, who's now at Fender.
Yeah.
And he was making music at the time, which is one of our big.
We're gonna have him on the show eventually.
And he and I went over to the Kasha booth where they were demonstrating his copy of the 2150. Now,
man, watch him sweat.
Oh, and we just sat back in the corner and listened and didn't say anything. And he's like demonstrating it to the people, and somebody would ask, so how does this compare to the VHT 2150? And we would just sit there and watch, and he'd look at us, and he's like sweating bullets. That's great. One of the funny things about it was we had the 2150 had the logo engraved into the aluminum.
Yeah,
it was a really expensive engraving job, and white fill and all of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then we had multiple colors, but they all had the engraved white logo. In the Kasha booth, they had one color, black, anodized, but the Kasha logo was printed in different colors of silkscreen.
Oh yeah.
It was so cheesy.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how we knew. The other way I knew.
Oh, Nigel, so true. So true. You see that? Hard to make the values clear to the uninitiated.
Yeah.
And it's a you just don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the guy who has to explain yourself.
Yeah.
Why you are the superior product.
But see, the whole problem with
that's stinky.
The whole. Okay, getting off of who did what to whom, which is irrelevant these days.
Who did what and who did who?
Yeah, but one of the ways we knew that we were making a dent is that, and I go way back with Randy Smith, but he talked to our sales manager at the time, and he didn't tell me this. He'd never told me this to my face, but he told our sales manager that, man, you guys like really put a serious dent in our power amp sales. Who are you people?
Wow.
And
wow.
But not like you're bad or you copied our stuff. It's like you came up with a different vibe of a power amp that even our customers told us we weren't interested in. We thought about putting a presence control and do a control to adjust, and all of our people said no, we don't want any of that stuff. We don't want to color any of the sound. So here you come along and you put these knobs and controls on your amp, and you're a runaway bestseller, and we totally missed that.
You know what though? That's interesting because that's, I mean, how did that make you feel? Honestly,
I was embarrassed.
were you embarrassed or were you kind of like low key? Wow.
I was honestly,
You will never get that if you're a copycat. You will never get that.
how I felt. What I mean by embarrassed was that
This is Mesa Boogie, man.
I was caught by surprise, the success.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was that I didn't expect it. Part of it was I wasn't really even planning for that. Honestly, you want to know the truth? I was going to make no more than 121 50s, take the money, and go pay a producer, a friend of mine, to come in and help me record my solo
That's so
album.
funny. That's where your head was at.
Yeah, it was like not about. I don't want to make these. I don't want to. This is not the business I want to be in. And
I'm still a guitar dude, and that's it.
I told that when I was telling that story to Randall, he's like, yeah. I'm like, Randall, I swear, I'm sorry we put a dent in your sales. That was like the last.
You're being apologetic about the whole
last thing on my mind, and he's like, "You're serious, aren't you?" And I said, when I told you I wasn't interested in being in this business, I wasn't lying. I told Rivera the same thing. He thought I was playing 3D chess with him too.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
he later figured out that no.
I know you well enough to know that this.
But anyway,
this is all unintentional in a sense.
It was at the time, but then when we learned to codify that, the first rule of Fight Club was it has to have a reason to exist.
I love Fight Club references.
I
need to watch that again.
I can't not watch it. I have to watch
once a year. Once a year.
Oh, 4 times a year, easy. I watched it 4 times in 2 months recently.
I watched it in 2020. That was the last time.
You got
I need to watch
up
it
on
again.
that. The second rule of Fight Club was that it had to the whatever the feature set or functionality of it had to be it had to be self-explanatory. It sort of had to be user-friendly. It had to.
It's not a what the hell is this?
Yeah,
proposition.
The feature set had to be. The features have to be a feature that have a reason to be on there. They have to be a useful feature, which
is a corollary of the first principle.
It's a corollary of the first principle, but it was based on a different foundation. The first principle is based on should we really be spending this time on this project?
Mm-hmm.
The second one is founded on the idea that there at the time were a lot of products, maybe there still are, I don't know, but at the time we came up with it, there were a lot of companies that were putting switches and knobs and shit on the front of amplifiers just for the sake of having switches and knobs. Every single function on
because we've had Fenders, we've had Marshalls, and now we're going to do, well, I mean, you were coming out in the 80s. That was all more.
Right. And
so we have racks that are more. Okay, the amplifiers are going to have more.
And there were amplifiers that I thought had some pretty cool features on them, but the user base were like going, just like, I don't even know how to make this thing sound like anything because there's so many knobs and switches. What is it supposed to sound like?
Mm-hmm.
If you were patient and focused, you could make that amp sound like something, but that isn't really what people wanted. They wanted to go plug into something and go, wow, this is everything I've heard about it. Mm-hmm. And then fine tune it. Mm-hmm. They didn't want features and functions that it made it. And I didn't hear this just from end users. I heard it from Art Thompson at Guitar Player magazine and the guys at Guitar World. At the time, they were all separate publications. All these different guys were like saying, and they were reviewing our product. And in the reviews, they were saying, the interesting thing about the features on Fry's amps is they aren't just superfluous features. They actually do a specific function that has a real need. It's not, but it doesn't, by pulling this knob or flicking the switch, it doesn't put the amp into another universe. It just enhances the direction of the sound that you're already going for in the first place.
Right.
So the feature set had to be logical and functional. And the third principle was that it had to be founded on the level of quality and the build quality and the design quality that goes into everything that we make has to be a consistent level of quality.
Absolutely.
Those are the three operating
Which
principles.
is way the fudge above the hoi polloi out there.
It's also way the hell out of, like, I stumbled across an idea, I'll make 100 of them, and then I'm going to go like disappear and make records.
Well, by that time, 2010, you're way past that.
Way past that.
You've had the
Right.
company, you understand.
So once we sort of locked into those operating,
You never told me about this before. This is super interesting.
you never
to me.
asked me about it before.
Yeah, but I mean, for guiding principles, it's funny that we never discussed.
Well,
this.
we talked about the reason to exist thing.
I knew it existed in there because that kind of aura surrounds everything that happens at the shop, and I sort of, I guess, intuited that from the moment that I met you and I saw what was going on there. It all made sense.
Well, you came in. We met when you came into the picture. We were really. We were seriously focused on adhering to those principles, and we were already we were about 2 years into that by the time. And so everything that there's always a bunch of ideas. There's always drawings and blueprints and half-assed prototypes and things like that laying all over the place. They're all over the place all the time. But when you put them through this grinder of conformity to a principle, then it's just like putting together an album. You have 15 songs and you got you're going to have 7 on the album, and there's a bunch of songs. They're not crap. They're just not for this record.
Well,
They're
but when I met you, now I'm a guy, like, my whole life I played Fender and Mesa stuff and had kind of gotten into the Marshall stuff. And I've owned a lot of other different amps too. But when I met you, like, to me, I'm a guy who really admires Leo Fender. Okay. Because I see him as a guy, he wasn't a musician, he wasn't a guitar player, but he was always trying to solve problems for the working guitarist out there. And when I met you, the first day that I met you, it was GPDI prototype. No. Actually, that wasn't out yet. It was LX2 prototype.
Mm-hmm.
Power Station maybe?
Prototype. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, okay, let me see the shop. It's like there are 5 people here.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, you're doing amplifiers, and I was really a late arriver to that stuff, and that's a whole other story. I don't even want to touch on it. Yeah. I'm going to sound like a complete bootlicker. But just the LX2 and the Power Station, I was like, okay, this is a whole different paradigm. This is problem solving to me on the level of what Leo Fender was doing in his day. It's like, if this guy can pull this shit off, this is going to be pretty amazing. But I was totally sold on the idea of the potential. That's funny. I've been drinking too much, but I remember I dated this woman once who was telling me, don't fall in love with potential, which is true. But I was like, man, this is going to be pretty cool if he can pull this stuff off.
The funny thing was that there was no doubt at that time that we could pull it off. Because first of all, it made sense. It fit into all of our. It fit into our list of 3 flavors of ice cream, or 3 rules of Fight Club, and there was something about it. There was something about the Power Station before it even existed. We were just like, probably the way somebody feels when they know they've written a hit record. It's no, we've got.
You just had that
thing.
feel. Yeah.
we got a damn thing.
And you had that same thing for the ether, I think, too. Just like
I didn't feel that way at all about the ether. The ether didn't. That's the exception. The ether is the exception. It wasn't trying to solve a problem. It didn't adhere to anything. All that was just blowing off steam.
But you were being guided by something there with the ether.
That was.
I know you were.
Whatever I was being guided by that was a case where I absolutely disconnected myself with the scrutiny of any operating principles and just totally went with the flow.
So the ether was not solving a problem.
No, I absolutely just went at that from the standpoint of I'm not going to question the muse. I'm just going to follow the muse. I've never done this before. I always have these moments during creating a product, creating a design where it's going along like this. It's going to be like this. It needs to do this. It blah 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 blah. But at a certain point, it starts to take on a personality. The original version of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, not the reissue, the original 1955 version or whatever.
Yeah.
The pods, right? You bring a bunch of pods and you put them in your basement, and they eventually gestate, and they sort of take on the personality traits of the person that they're going to replace. And when you look at the pod, you can start seeing their face sort of develop. And at a certain point, they start taking on a life of its own. And that's the best way that I can sort of characterize it, is that at some point it starts expressing its own sort of, it comes out of there someplace, and then it dissolves down into here somewhere and sort of formulates into something. And then as it comes out of my fingers and it starts to take shape, then it starts influencing me back how it wants to be fleshed out. And I sort of follow that to a certain point, but I push back to a certain point because I don't want to get off of the direction that I had originally envisioned for it, unless it turns out that, yes, it's telling me I'm really going down the wrong road. But a lot of times it's not like that. It's usually just a Y on the road. You can go this way, you can go this way. It'll be this or it'll be that. But the ether was like, I'm just going to sit in the back of a car with the spleef and a drink and my feet up in the air, let somebody else drive. And
you were letting the universe drive on that one.
Just going to let the universe drive on that one.
But I think that's another thing too. And Amanda, that's crazy. Your uncle's in that movie. That is awesome. The original one. I think
the female lead's boyfriend. He plays.
I love that.
Oh, they're talking about a movie. I'm missing that conversation, but
well, no, it's the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh,
that's what she's saying.
See, I'm off in it.
No, she's totally playing into what you're talking about. That was another thing. Like, when I met you, you had those things happening, but then you started to call me over. Hey, can you come over and play this thing? I've been listening to it in a vacuum. I need to have another guitar player play this and tell me if I'm like off on Mars or whatever. And it was like, okay, here's a dude who is firmly like I saw the prototypes of the things that you were doing that were aimed at solving problems for us working guitarists, which is like awesome and super inspirational to me. But then when you called me in to play the ether, it was like, this is coming from a completely different place in your brain. This was like a pure inspiration. Like you just said it was blowing off steam or whatever. But it's like coming from a completely different place. And I remember this was the best thing. When I came in and played the ether, I think the reason you asked me to come in and play it was you had just gotten samples from Fane, and we were going, all right, let's listen to the Celestian Gold. which you had been shipping it with, and now let's listen to it with the Fane. And I
Okay.
haven't played the Ether yet.
All right, so let me put a little bit more context on that. First of all, you'd been coming around enough that right off the bat we established a friendship right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, there was this thing that
mind
happened
meld.
right immediately. It wasn't because I often invite somebody to come down and play that has a different set of ears. But a lot of times what happens is they come and they go, everything is great. Oh, and it's not reliable information. And you weren't coming off that way. And I would question you about that. I would say, are you sure that's what you're hearing? Don't tell me what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And you would go, I'm not telling you what I want to hear. You would play.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't talk so much. You would play and you would demonstrate why you liked a thing the way you heard it, or why you like that thing. You would be able to articulate it by playing. You see, I'm doing this and it's doing that. So there was a reason to that. But really the reason that that I had you come and listen to the new Fane speaker after we were using the gold was because the Fane was a new development. It was based on original Fane speakers, the characteristics of them, but changing some characteristics about them that were weak at the time. So we were evolving it into a modern Fane with this classic sort of character, but some modern generational sort of enhancements or evolution to make it, a more usable contemporary speaker. But over the past 10 years, I developed this little bit of a ring in my ears that causes this high frequency pitch.
Right.
This
Super hi-fi kind of.
Yeah. So whenever I play a chord, I hear a little sizzle on the very top that sounds like fizz. And everything has it. When I listen to the radio, when I watch the TV, there's this little fizz going on the top of everything. It's very subtle, but it's enough to make me think I need to have another set of ears to make sure. I know that that's not there, but I want to make sure because it could be there.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm hearing that little fizz, and there is a fizz in there that I'm missing, if I discount it, then it could get by me, right?
Right.
Erica's got really sensitive high frequency hearing. She's really great about that. If she heard something annoying, she would come right out and tell me, there's something wrong with that top end. There's something coming out of there. I can hear it a mile away.
I'm just a dude in the trenches who's like sitting behind monitors all day long.
You know when something sounds good or something sounds wrong.
Well, to me, I mean, it's my particular version of it, but I think you and I had like a way of communicating it that, you understood my terminology immediately, and I understood your terminology immediately. Like, oh, we're talking the same kind of stuff.
Right. So that was really what that was about, is I wanted to make sure that this Fane had these qualities and this sort of articulate, clear top end, but it wasn't fizzy. The fizziness I was hearing was the fizziness I know that my hearing is adding, not what's actually coming out of the speaker.
Right.
So it wasn't just you. It was the Masa, our lead production guy, who also does QC.
Shout out to Masa. He's the man.
He also has that detailed, sensitive. High
he does?
Yeah. So
okay.
So we've got 4 people who are really super tuned in to how things sound and how things are supposed to sound and how things are not supposed to sound. So I have my feel and my intuition and my desire that it sound this way and feel this way and behave this way, and then I have my 3 doors.
Yes.
Yeah. That.
But when you're dealing with them every single day,
or the 3 locks in the door. Everybody has to put their key in the lock and turn it in order for the door to open. And you're one of them, and Erica's one, and Masa's one, and I'm the 4th one. So I'm the one that gets to push the button after the other 3 people turn the key.
That's the 3-lock box. Sammy Agar.
Yeah.
Tyler, David Torn loves it. That validates anything. I agree. Cheers to David Torn.
Yeah. So having gone like way, way, way off the rails,
we're not going to talk about tubes today. We're not going to get there. We
It's-
should save that.
It's kind of depressing in a way, but it's also very convoluted. The whole thing about the tube business, and maybe we should get into it a little later because we've gone pretty far out.
Michael's going to show up in a minute. and we
Mike's
got to
going to
bring
show
him
up
on,
in a bit,
talk about the PLR.
and I could go on and on about the tube things for days and days and days. But suffice it to say that today, Electro-Harmonix announced that they are ceasing shipping Russian tubes because Russia has banned the export of certain.
Wait,
class of
Russia has
products.
banned the export?
Russia
or
has
the
banned the production, the shipping of a range of products, and those vacuum tubes got caught in that net.
Wait a minute.
This just happened today.
Why would Russia ban?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why would they do something that would?
They are subject to sanctions. Why are they doing that? That makes absolutely no sense.
That doesn't make any sense. Which
Okay.
leads me to believe that there's something else going on there. I don't, but again, with the tube industry, there's always a story behind a story behind a story behind a story. And when you ask me how our week went, the whole week has been devoted to producing, shipping, fulfilling back orders, getting the power load out there into the marketplace, completing the owner's manual, getting the videos and the demonstrations out there, and oh, by the way, trying to parse what's happening in the tube industry enough to make sure that we get the tubes that we need to do the production for the next month's releases,
Right.
and all of that. So this whole week has been just layers and layers and layers
Right.
of convoluted challenges and wins and losses.
And in Austin, I know we're at war, but it's interesting that the country that is being subjected to all of the sanctions would decide that we are going to halt exports. Like, that's bizarre to me.
They're the ones that want income.
Right, exactly.
Why would they?
Exactly.
Why would they halt a revenue stream? Although honestly,
That's super
see, that's why
bizarre.
it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's
There's
like,
something
and
else
by the
going
way, we're not at war with them, and they're not at war with us. Russia is at war.
on. Well,
with
it's a sort of proxy war.
It's not a proxy war yet.
But it kind of is.
It kind of is, but it isn't officially, and that's what the whole thing about NATO and not participating in the
Man,
the
we could
no-fly zone.
totally go down this rabbit hole and talk about
It's
it.
very convoluted,
But we
and
won't,
We're not going to get into
because
that.
we do guitar shit.
What we are
and not
going to
political
do
shit.
is pray for and express our support for Ukraine, and that we ultimately are, as a nation and as a group of allies, are going to find a way to help Ukraine through this
Right.
challenge and
Right.
come out
Right.
victorious. And I think one of the biggest things that they have going for them is that the world loves a winner. And Zelensky is a winner. He's a leader, and he's not afraid. He's not
Right.
afraid. He's looking this right in the eye and saying, cross this line, give us your worst. You're not going to scare us. The very first thing that he said, like, we don't need a ride, we need ammunition, that set the tone for the whole thing. And all of us, as far as I'm concerned, the best we can do is just latch onto that, know that those people want help. They don't want the job done for them. They
Right.
just want help to do what
Right.
they want to do.
Right. There's
And
so many
that's
things
a-
I
there's a
want to
big-
say, but that's not the
That's
point
a big
of the
thing.
show.
The world loves a winner. The world wants to support people that want.
We should have a whole other thing that's not Friat branded. That would be world events. I would love to talk about that. That is one of my favorite things to discuss. However,
We're going to move on.
in our green room, we have the man, the IR creator, I want to say something that rhymes, but I'm not going to do it because I've been drinking. Should we bring in our man?
Let's with tonight we have as a guest Michael Nielsen and Michael, come on down.
Yeah.
I don't hear him.
Hey, Michael, we can't hear you. We cannot hear you. Jim, it's totally okay to ask a question about the PS100 because at the end of the show, we want to answer some questions tonight. So anyone who has questions, throw them in and we'll try and get to them at the end. I'm drinking. It's a good vibe. We can go long tonight. I don't care. I don't have anything to do early in the morning, so I'm happy to just roll. Okay, Michael popped out. He'll pop back in again.
Yeah.
And you know what?
He's got to restart.
I'm going to go pour a little bit more sauce while he's getting in here.
All right. Well,
Because I'm on a wireless, and it's Friday night, and it's a good time.
Okay. So while you do that, I'm looking over. I'm looking over the list of things that we're going to talk about. I'm going to have a look at when will the IR be available for purchase. Okay, real quickly about the IR is available for purchase. We'll get around to that. That's not our primary focus right now. And we'll discuss that in a couple of weeks, the next show. Right now, our concern is getting the thing out there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah!
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Great
It
to have
wouldn't
you
be
here.
Malcontents if the microphone just worked right away.
Yeah. No, you can't have that.
Oh, man, it's cool to have you on. It's cool to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we didn't do any of the setup that we had been talking about that we would do in order to bring you on so that people would know what we're going to talk about. But
We actually had a lot planned. We have a lot of tube goodness planned that we'll get to in the next show because I think that's some really cool information that you were actually dazzling me with earlier in the week when we had a phone call. But we went along with the other stuff. So anyway,
right.
we're here with Michael. It's PLIR rollout week. Super exciting for, for me, because I've been using it like crazy. Hey, look at that! How do you have one of those, mister?
There you go.
I have one. Where's yours?
Mine's in my apartment back in Echo Park.
Your apartment?
Yeah. Which, hey, that's super important in an apartment because I got to be low volume, man.
Yeah.
And I have a D120 in there that is a raging beast.
Well, we have Michael on as a guest for a couple of reasons.
Because he's a badass.
Besides that,
nicest guy in the world.
Besides that,
most handsome guy in Los Angeles.
Besides that, that's you're getting the reasons are getting stronger as you
best
go.
80s guitar magazine collection on the internet.
That's very true. That is also very true. When we came out with the Power Load, the original Power Load, it was an analog cab only. And at the time that it came out, the IR thing was just starting to become available. The technology was just starting to get out there, and the discussions were happening about is this good? Does this work? What about latency and blah 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 blah? Does using an IR turn my analog sound into a digital sound? And all there was a certain amount of controversy, and everybody wasn't on board yet. But
what year was that?
Geez, 2012.
No, the Power Load didn't come out in 2012.
12 or 12?
Wait a minute. What year did the Power Station come out?
Power Station came out in. Okay, so.
Because the Power Load came
right,
out after.
No, it was more like 2016, 17.
See, I think you're
Power
thinking
Load,
about when it was in your head versus when it was hitting the
The
market.
Power Station came out in 2015. And the following year, I had conceptualized the Power Load, which was to take the reactive load from the Power Station and make it so that you could filter it through a cab simulator and plug it directly into your DAW.
Well, yeah, you don't need it for the live applications. You don't need the power section,
Right.
the boost aspect
Right.
of the power station,
Right.
right?
Right.
Completely modular breakdown of the whole, all the
actually-
technology.
Actually, see the cab sim development. The reason I say it started in 2012 is because cab sim development started with the GPDI, the Kickstarter project, which was before the power station. So that kind of evolved into the power load was in the box the same size as the GPDI, and so that was like a spin-off of the power station. And so we put it out with the analog cab, and just as that was happening, the IRs were starting to happen, and people were saying, okay, the analog cab sim is obsolete, it's dead, there's no reason to have that. And so we were thinking, yeah, really? Did we sort of miss the miss the boat on that one? And we were looking at it, and we started listening to IRs, and we were thinking, yeah, maybe, but maybe not. Let's listen, let's check it out. And we did sort of run the whole scenario on that, and found out that in fact the analog cab does have a reason to exist. It does have a purpose that supersedes the fact that it's not the latest new thing. It's been superseded.
That's
by the
totally
IR.
true, but let's save that. Let's
Okay.
talk about Michael being involved.
Well, that's kind of what led up to him being involved. So that's why I was sort of laying.
Yeah,
down.
because
All right.
when you mentioned like, hey, I want you to check something out, and then you said it's an analog cab sim, I was like, oh.
Right, we all do.
Because I've been down that road, the Palmers and stuff, trying to like get a Eddie Van Halen sound out of a Palmer, which was just a total red herring. It's impossible. Or any of the group tube simulators and all that stuff. It just was
right.
But so you sent me home with one and a Sound City 50 head, and it wasn't even, you didn't have to try to get a good sound. It was just like, oh, that's good. That's like,
that's
super
interesting.
good.
That's interesting. That was your first impression.
Yeah. And instantly I was like, oh, this sounds like Pete Townsend. Like first thing I did, and I was like, this totally reminds me of Eminence Front. And then I ended up doing a cover of Eminence Front as part of the demo for that. Like I sort of reimagined it.
That's awesome.
See, well, that's fantastic, because that means that you were inspired by that.
Well, see, for me with the analog cab sim, I looked at it like I've talked about it on the show before. I used to have one of the first editions of Palmer, and I liked it because it did a thing that nothing else did. It's like having it. I mean, I can't say it's like having another amplifier, but it was like having a tool that did a thing that would cut and sit a certain way in a mix with a couple amps that I had that was cool. That after I had it for a while, it's like, okay, like you said, okay, it won't do an EVH sound at all. It's not going to get me traditional guitar tone in the way that I'm used to kind of conceiving it. But it does this particular thing that, when I was doing certain records, I'd go, oh yeah, let's do the super reverb through the Palmer. I know it'll make this particular thing happen. And so with the analog cab sim, I started to think of it like that. Like it's just this really weird, I might use it, I don't know, 2% of the time, but it's cool to have, because when I have to have it, I have to have it, right? And that's the way I was thinking about the original analog cab sim in the GPDI, and that's how I would use it. But then you expanded upon it with the original power load, and still, I sort of thought of it like, yeah, it's a little bit of a dinosaur idea. But then you asked me to come to the shop when you had the I guess it was a prototype of the PLIR. And you had it set up through a mixer, and you said, okay, listen through this. I'm still doing the analog cab sim. And I'm going, okay, I'm going to have an open mind about this. I'm not quite sure. If you're doing the IR, it's like, why the analog cab sim? But you had it running through a mixer, and you went, okay, listen to this. And you had, I don't know what we were playing through, probably the Sound City. And you had it set up so that the analog cab sim was panned hard left, and the IR panned hard right.
And it wasn't even really a great IR. It was just
No. It was just whatever you
generic.
grabbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, generic. And you put the cans on. Okay, just play. Oh. And it was like, oh, now I get it. Like it was kind of filling in for each other. Like this is massive. And I didn't think about it till later on. You started to conceptualize it like, how would you explain it? What is the analog cab sim to you? It's different than the IR because
here's how I explained it.
Yes.
When you're in a studio getting set up to record your guitar sound, you're in the studio, the room where your amp is, sitting in front of it, playing. I mean, traditionally, this is what you would do. You play through the amp, set it all up so that it sounds right. Okay, I'm ready. Then you go into the control room and you listen to it through monitors. And then you're like, oh, okay.
So we got mic,
preamp. I'm hearing the room and the mic and the distance and the angle of the mic and blah, blah, blah coming through monitors.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing. The mid-range sounds different. Everything sounds different. And an engineer going, it's all right. It's all right. That's what happens. I mean, that's the part of the thing. You know, we dial it in. We move the mics until we
But
get
that's
it where
what
we
makes
want.
it sound like what we were used to
That's
hearing
the way
on record.
That's the reason it sounds like the way we're used to hearing it on the record.
Right.
And then you go back into the room with the amp and you go,
what's this shit?
No, this sounds like I want it to sound. Okay. Then you go in, and then when you hear a mix, then you go, oh, I see how it works. You know, when you're green, you know, then you've experienced that for the first time.
Yeah.
But you go back and listen to the amp, and the amp is right in front of you. And what are you hearing? You're hearing the sound of the amp, but your ears are doing a thing that you never even thought about until now, would think about, is what are your ears doing? They're not just listening to the sound of the amp. They are placing you in a space in relationship to other objects in that space. And it's informing you where you occupy that space with regards to, if you're on a floor, there is a ceiling above you. There are walls to the right and left of you. There are walls in front and the rear of you. And there's an amplifier in front of you, and it is a certain distance. And your ears are conveying all that information to your brain so that you know where in the universe you are at that moment. That sounds cosmic. But when you watch a guy that's blind riding a bicycle down the street and going like this, that's what he's doing. He's listening to his snapping his fingers and listening to the reflections of his fingers snapping off the street, off the house across the street,
This is radar.
off of a car that he just passed. That's his radar.
Yeah.
He's establishing his place in space and time.
That's interesting.
And that's how he navigates down the road while riding a bicycle while blind. That's what you're doing when you're playing the guitar in front of the amp. Now, when you go into the control room, you've extricated yourself from that space, and you're hearing it in another space, in a different environment.
Through a capsule
right.
that's listening to this
And so,
little area.
So now you have a new sound source that you're listening to, and you're reestablishing yourself in a new space with a completely different set of circumstances. A different size, a different shape, a different amount of insulation through different speakers and all kinds of things like that. That is the difference between listening to an IR and an analog cab.
I think that's like that. Technically, I'm totally behind all of that. But
up to the point where
no, I I think just cutting straight through, simplifying, is that
horrors.
Please, please.
like I was working on a soundtrack that had a bunch of like sort of like indie songs, and so I needed a bunch of different guitar tones. So I had plugged into the power station, and I was gonna audition some IRs afterwards, and it had fuzz going through this thing, and
Like fuzz, like fuzz pedal fuzz.
fuzz into the head into the power station.
Okay.
And then I was tracking it, and I'm like, well, let me figure out my IR situation. Before I could get to the IR, I was like, holy shit, that's the most awesome sound I've ever heard in my life. It was explosive and direct, had all the bottom, had all the top. It was immediate, intangible.
Yes.
I mean, it was way over the top, worked perfect for this, but now you've got that, which is extreme. And then now with the analog cab simulation, you have everything in between. So you can get all of that immediacy that like put everything right there, super, there you go, so right there in your face. And it's an incredibly powerful sound that's unfiltered. You're not getting all of that extra weird comb filtering that happens that, when you get it right on a guitar cab, it's fantastic.
Right.
But it's a completely different tool. And especially for layering, it's fantastic. You just can't think of it like the way I used to think of it, which is like, okay, I want to sound like Eddie or Steve Vai or Angus or something. So I'll plug into this analog cab sim and it's going to give me that. That's not what it does.
No.
It's like a greenback versus a EV or a vintage 30 or a Fane speaker.
But it's none of those.
No, I'm saying like you can't expect an EV to sound like a vintage 30.
Right.
It's not what it is.
Yeah.
They're
But
completely
all of
different
those
things.
speakers are like kind of, I don't want to say dumbing down, but they're reducing the spectrum, the sonic spectrum that we had to work with.
They're massive filters. Massive.
Yes, exactly. And the analog cab sim is like, oh, you have everything to work with, right?
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean that that's what you want to do all of the time.
That's right.
But it's wonderful to have that tool there when you want it.
Yeah, and there's times. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I said there's times where the analog cab sim sounds significantly bigger than a mic'd guitar cab. I feel like, especially like say you're going to do a heavily affected ambient sort of guitar tone and you want to get the clean sound in there, you could go direct in the board. It's going to sound tiny. Get all the, your big tube amp coming. And then you also don't filter it down because it's not going through the cab. You get all that bigness. And now you can create a soundscape, a very cinematic thing without the signal starting small. Whereas with the guitar cab, you're putting it here because that's the rock zone. You're cutting off the highs, you're cutting off the lows, you're punching out the mids.
Did you say the rock zone?
Yeah, this is the rock zone right in there.
I love that. That's the rock zone. Yeah.
Rock zone. Okay.
Yeah. So if you need that, that's a different direction. But if there's this whole other world that's there to explore on that analog cab sim front.
Right. Absolutely. And here's the thing too that I think we three spoke about this one time on a Zoom. The analog cab sim, like anything, like certain speakers, certain cabinets, certain amplifiers, even certain guitars, probably certain players, have strengths and weaknesses. And like I'm always used to saying, like, your strengths, there's a flip side to that coin, are also your weaknesses. Like, Yngwie is so strong at a particular thing, but you'd never hire him for other things, right? So like, what's wonderful about the cab sim, the analog cab sim, to me, I'm probably not going to lean on that for my heavily distorted stuff. Like, I like it for really clean things, to kind of maybe a little bit of breakup kind of things. That to me is where it shines, because it's super chimey and big, and it's got all of the top end. Like, all the stuff that speakers are going to roll off is available to you in the cab sim. So the analog cab sim. So
but that
me-
for that reason, to me, also the analog cab sim sounds really modern to me, super modern.
So is modern to you a euphemism for like hi-fi or like full
No,
spectrum?
I mean literally like the last 4 or 5 years of whatever you'd hear on the radio. Take anyone that
And do you
you're
think
not going to find an Angus Young.
But does that come
412
from
kind of
people
stuff.
using this kind of sort of technology? Like, do you think it's because the stuff that you'll hear on the radio, the guitar stuff, is coming from modelers and things that sound more immediate?
I think it's a little more of like, when I dial in, if you just put me in a vacuum and to dial in the perfect guitar tone,
Yeah.
it will have an era about it, somewhere between 1978 or 75 and 1995. Like
Because that
that
was
to
your,
me,
yeah.
that's when I was,
Your
coming
formative.
of age.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think
Vernon Reid, sorry to cut you off there. Vernon Reid had the funniest quote where he said, some people get stuck on thinking, like the best music ever is the things that they were listening to when they lost their virginity.
it has to do. There's actually
stuck there.
there's it's a neural thing that when you come of age in that like 13 to 16, there's wiring that happens to you that feels like everything is super important and it locks in. There's no surprise. You talk to anyone and you're like, what's the best music? Well, it happened when I was 12 to 14. Like for every single person, at least in America, it is what it is. Anyway, real quick, back to the modern thing. You'll get a producer that's like, cool, we're gonna put some guitar, and you're like, well, that sounds old, or that sounds like 60. Everything is gonna have an era. Show me something that I haven't heard before, and be like, there you go. It sounds very fresh, very new. It doesn't always sound like what I'm looking for. Like if I want to sound like Metallica or Van Halen, that's not the direction. But if I want to go something, especially trying to fit in the current landscape of sort of like a 2D in the box.
That is really
mix,
interesting that you're
need that.
saying this, because a lot of us guitarists, like, who grew up listening to the types of, all of the acts that we're kind of citing. I mean, at this point, they would all be considered classic rock. Like I see Scott talking about Limp Bizkit. Dude, Limp Bizkit came out in the early 2000s. That's 20 years old now, right? I mean, that's sort of bordering on classic. I mean, what and just for grins, like what was Limp Bizkit using at that time? I don't remember.
I think you used Rectos most of the time. Everyone used Rectos from.
So if you're thinking about, okay, it's 2022, we're playing electric guitar, and we don't want to sound like grandpa rock or dad rock or something. Like, what can we do? I mean, I'm not saying analog cab sim is the answer, but it is something to kind of like throw a new thing out there that's sonically it's different.
It's kind of a wrench that breaks you out of a paradigm, and I think that the demo that Michael did, which was mostly an explainer demo, but he played some really interesting tracks, and one of them is this wide thing, and I think it's the guitar with the fuzz into the analog cab, but it's really wide, and it's got this edgy top and a big solid footing on it. It's just got this expanse.
Yeah.
And I listened to that and I went, wow. On the strength of that, it was a recipe that was like, wow, you got something there.
You got
that I didn't expect to hear out of the analog cab sim.
Oh, that's interesting.
I heard was, what a wicked sound. It was a rhythm sound. And then I read the description and it was like a fuzz and the analog cab sim, and I went, holy moly, okay, that's the thing that a designer wishes for when they make a product and put it out there, that somebody takes it and does something with it you don't expect them to do.
Oh man, I'm reading some of the comments here. This is good stuff that I feel like we could talk about each of these things. Each of your comments
Yeah.
for like 20 minutes apiece.
Yeah. And
Maybe
by the
we'll
way,
get
hey,
to them
Trace,
later.
It's great to see that you're here. There's an old friend of mine I haven't seen
Oh,
forever.
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, so he chimed in.
So we can talk about this stuff in as many episodes as we want. But we're talking about the analog cab sim right now. Maybe we should talk. Michael, I don't know how long you have, so I don't want to hold you for too long, but we
Like another
definitely
half hour.
Okay, awesome. Then we should definitely talk about
Creation
the
of
fact that,
IRs.
yeah, you
Yeah.
were the man. You made
So-
these IRs that,
Right. So we had this conversation
Yeah.
about the PL1,
Mhm.
and then when we got the PL1 out in the market and started getting feedback and stuff, and then starting seeing what was happening with IRs, I start getting the idea that okay, well, we should probably develop into the IR direction, but I'm not ready to give up the analog. But we'll just set that aside for right now,
Mhm.
and I need to sort of get my head wrapped around the whole IR mindset, get my head wrapped around the technology, the concept, the best way to do it, and all that. And I contact a few people, and I contact Mike, and they said, I want to get together and talk to you about possibly doing some IR stuff for us. And he's like, nah. He was just like, nah,
Well,
I'm not even about that.
yeah, but you were kind of like, I don't know anything about it, right? That was
Yeah,
where
I
you
mean,
were at
there's-
that point.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
using them, but I don't know shit about them kind of attitude. And I went,
exactly.
oh, really? So I went, okay, well, right after that, we had a pandemic and a shutdown and a this and a that and all of that, all of the things that delayed the power load. So when it came finally down to the time where I said, screw it, I've had enough time to wrap my head around the whole concept of it, and I get it, and I understand it, and I have all the equipment I need to do it. But now I have to sit down and actually do it. And by the time I got to that, all hell was breaking loose at the company. Development, shipping, increase in orders, just everybody being overloaded with stuff. And I'm like, I'm not getting any, even if I come to my home office, which is where we do the studio here, and get away from everybody, there's still so much external input attacking me that I don't get to be able to create my space where I hear my muse. And I just went, I'm not getting anywhere. So I asked a couple of people that I knew that had some engineering skills and ears for guitars and stuff. And one guy that I thought was just going to go, oh yeah, great, let's get together. He went, nah, I don't really have my head wrapped around that. But you know who would be really, really great on that is Michael McNeil.
You know what?
Michael Nielsen. And I went,
I thought
I was thinking, I talked to him. He was like pretty far away from that. And so then I contacted you, and you're like going, yeah, I got it all down now. It was a complete.
But that's so funny because I think I might have been another voice in there that said to talk to him, not because I knew, Michael, that you did them, but I thought you would know about them enough to recommend which way to go.
Yeah, that we would have you as a curator. We would create them, and then you could give us,
or at least you'd be like, oh, this is the guy to talk to.
Right.
But by that time you had become the guy to talk to and to actually
Yeah,
do it.
I've done a bunch of cab stuff in many directions. Did two-note stuff of my own, stuff with some other companies.
And you're killing it, man.
Thanks. And it was, it's funny when I started, it was like, I'll never do this again. I had to redo it 4 times to get one cab done. It was like an entire week and a half, nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
But I kind of have it a bit sorted out now. And yeah, this was really good timing too, because I wanted to start building home studios, which is where I'm at now. And I have the power load and the power station at the work studio and a power load. But I also wanted to be able to do like a wet, dry, wet into a rack here and have everything come up. And I wanted options, and I don't have, I'm right next to the kitchen. I don't have a isolated 412 space. So I'm all about cab sim here. So when you called, it was like, oh, this is a really perfect opportunity to sort of get my fingers into this, which is like, can I dial it into exactly how I want it? This is great.
Yeah, the whole deal was.
Oh,
is
that's
that
funny because you're already using the power load.
Yeah, and the whole thing was it wasn't about yeah, we need to make our versions of NH30s, blah 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 blah. This was a totally different thing. We have our cabs with speakers that we've curated and helped design or designed ourselves, and they're an integral part of our amp signature sound, and they need to be expressed properly.
Totally. But I have, before we get into that, and I think that's a super salient point right now, I just have to say that's interesting, Michael, thinking about your position, where you're going, I am a power load user. I want to move into working in my own home more, right? And you're like, wait a minute, I'm getting the call to actually work on the unit that I use all the time. Like, I have influence on making this like possibly the perfect tool for my particular needs. That's a pretty cool position to be in.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I started just even going back on the real quick, like 5 years ago, I bought every load box that I could find and was running through them, and I did some videos comparing and contrasting all of them, and because it's in a sense it's a really subtle difference, because you have the IR and the head are going to make much bigger difference than the load, but when you're playing through it and you do them back to back, I don't know, maybe the difference isn't quite that subtle, especially the feel of all of the loads.
Absolutely.
And for
That's
me,
where it's at, man, is the feel.
yeah, for me, the feel of the Fryette loads had the most sort of like that pushback where it comes in and then throws it back at you, as opposed to feeling hi-fi. And a lot of them feel hi-fi and they sound good, but it just didn't feel as nice to play. And then I played better. Like, I'd be demoing it, trying to play the same thing, and then I would just go off and play better on the Fryette. And like, oh, just jam a little bit. So that's, someone had asked me on the launch video, is this a killer of one of the other brands? And IRs are IRs. They're going to sound the same. The cab sim is unique in this, and it's a great. The analog cab sim is a great analog cab sim, but the load it's unique. Some of the other loads sounded like each other. This one, there's only the Fryette load that sounds like this load box. So to me, that's a big part of this whole thing.
And that's all down to, again, there are enough people in the world doing the Marshall cab and the Marshall feel and the Marshall thing. And we've never been about that. We've been about, what about all the other?
Oh man, well, I have to say,
what about all the other colors in the palette?
Well, I'm saying as like my unique voice in this discussion here is that I have been using like for the when did the GPDI hit? 2015, 16? I
15, yeah.
Like, what I do for a living is I play guitar basically from home at this point, right? Just sending out tracks around the world basically. And my rig for the past 5 years has been playing the GPDI basically through different IRs that I load through Space Designer and Logic. And when Michael just said that the IRs aren't a big deal, like, I'm here to kind of testify a little bit that I don't agree. Because I've been using, and I won't name who they are, but like all great stuff, that I've been making a living with for the last 5 years.
Well, I think what he was saying is that if you have one IR and you apply it to a particular amp with several different loads, the IR is going to be kind of the constant, but the behavior of the load is what's going to influence how they really behave.
But what I'm saying here and I want to say this because Michael's on the show right now, is I've been using that same load basically for the last 5 years of my professional life. And then when the IRs that you made showed up in my mailbox and I plugged them in and I started using them, I haven't used anything else since.
Awesome.
And I'm here to say that I told Steve this evening, it's like, I think I'm changing my rig. I think that what I'm doing from now on, and this could change. I love the GPDI, but playing the deliverance head through the PLIR, I'm no longer using IRs in my computer. I'm just using the IRs that Michael made that are loaded in the PLIR. Deliverance, PLIR with the stock IRs into a Strymon delay pedal for spacing, delay, reverb, whatever you want to call it, directly into my interface. And I'm good. I'm away. And I have that combined with the analog cab sim. Like, I hate to say that's all I need, because you read that kind of stuff on forums all the time. That's all I need. And then, people change out another amp the next month or whatever. But I feel like I have so much to explore there. And the IR piece, to me, again, and I think that's just because I've been using the GPDI for so long with that basic kind of load kind of structure. I know what that sounds like. The IRs, to me, under the kind of microscope in front of the same monitors, are a really big deal to me.
Well, you didn't really, you kind of didn't really have an expansive sort of vocabulary about cabinet sounds and speaker behaviors before then.
No.
But what I have been telling Joe for a long time is that his style and his technique and his playing ability are such that his skill set supersedes the limitations of the rigs that he was sort of used to using.
Oh.
And I was primarily showing you stuff because I wanted to hear you play some of that stuff through different sounding situations. And then once you started doing that, then you started hearing yourself, I think, more effectively realizing the potential of some of the things that you were writing and creating. And then once you realized that and got hooked on it, then you started going, oh, okay, now I see what that's bringing to the table. And the other thing about the way Michael approached doing the cabs is that we gave him everything to work with, and that he did actually take the time to go through the whole process. And going through the process doesn't mean that you just do a sweep and then you do an IR and then you're on.
No, Michael's a homie. He's
and
like
I think
a guitar tone junkie.
You must have done like 100 samples, I think. 50 to 100.
Yeah, at least, because even on the first one I did 50 on the first cab.
You're such a geek.
It's like you do one, you convert it, bring it back, try. I'm like, okay, I gotta move the mics a little bit. Sometimes I'll add a little EQ, change the mic blend. I mean, there's a lot of little tweaking to get it to sound like it wasn't tweaked at all.
Okay.
And then you reduce, after you got all that part done, you reduced it down to a handful that you felt were the cream of the crop, and then Joe and I did the same thing, and we all kind of came to this consensus about what was the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And that's how we came up with the 8 that went into the PLIR. There's other good ones in there. There's also ones that we wouldn't consider using.
There's one that's not in there that I like, I would like to.
But the thing that you really did that was the right way was that you just didn't cheese out on, okay, this is enough. you went all the way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I
Oh
don't.
yeah.
So here's the thing where I'm gonna.
And he came back to tell us all about it.
I'm broadcasting my ignorance here. Like I don't know because Fanes are very different than Celestians, and Jensen's and the things that I've been using in my the previous IRs. I don't know like what the ratio is to like. Fanes are kind of a newer thing to me in my life in terms of being able to hear them in front of monitors. But I feel like the combination of having like the selection of all these cabinets with Fanes in it, plus Michael, whatever you're doing in terms of capturing these things, I don't know what it is, but like these IRs have a lot more heft and dimension to them than the IRs that I am used to using. I don't, and like, Fanes are a lot more like, to me, they're it's just like balance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think of. Balance. There's no goofy, constipated frequency stuff going on. It's just complete balance. So I'm hearing, it almost sounds like I'm hearing the amplifier and the cabinet in a more, what am I trying to say? I drank too much. Like just in a more accurate way without the speaker kind of like over enhancing certain aspects.
Yeah. I think there's a multi-tiered cake, speaker IR cake here. One is that Steve's cabs don't sound like the typical cab.
Okay.
Like they don't sound like a Marshall variant, really.
Can you go a little bit deeper into what that means to you? I would love to hear what that means.
I think overall they sound heftier than if you put just a 1960 Marshall cab, which I love, it's fantastic. It sounds smaller. It's like smaller and quicker. And Steve's cabs have more of a battleship sort of feeling to them. Like the first time
I can tell you exactly what that is.
Even the Sound Cities?
Yes.
Well, the Sound City, the first time I heard the 50-watt head was going through a 212, and it sounded like Angus Young playing through a stack. It was unbelievable.
The thing about it is, and I used to, I'd recorded with Dave Jordan, and he had explained to me about about sonic space, and he said, think of it like a painting. You have X number of space on this canvas to apply color.
Sure.
And if you put tons and tons of red, you don't have a lot of room for blue. So you can't put more blue than there is red. You can only put what is left that isn't red, blue. And if you
let me translate that real quick. That's the rock zone.
and if you try to put more blue on, it either turns to brown mud or the blue covers up the red, and now there's less red and more blue.
Yeah, and then the red takes on a different.
It's additive and subtractive.
Yeah,
you can't keep adding more sound in a finite space. The old saying.
Well, it's Metallica, with super bassy guitar, and then you have to pull the bass out.
It's the old. It's the old. Richie Blackmore's band,
Deep Purple.
Deep Purple's in the studio. The famous quote of them being in the studio was, I think Richie Blackmore said, "Make everything louder than everything else." And
my man.
And there's a limit. And a cabinet, a speaker, and a cabinet, the behavior is the same way. Marshall cabinets have a very pronounced upper mid range, and when you hear that, your ears actually have a finite amount of capacity to hear sounds. Once your ears are filled with sound pressure level, other parts of sound pressure level fall off. That's why records are mastered the way they are to listen to on the radio, so that you can hear the part that they want you to hear. the vocals, the drums, when there's a drum fill. If you listen to old Beatle record, when they're playing the whole song, you're just hearing cymbals and some snare and stuff. But when they all stop playing and you hear Ringo go ba-dum ba-doodle boom, you hear this resonant kick and the bashing snare drum and the cymbal really crash. But then all the drums just go down to like this when the guitars and the vocals come back. And same thing happens in a cabinet. So when the speaker has a more balanced sound, the Marshall cabinet has every bit of as much bottom end as the Freya cab or the Sound City cab and top end. But the fact that the speaker punches out more upper mids, your ears perceive the bottom and the top of that cab to be.
Oh, I love this. This is voodoo. This is
Right.
guitar player.
And that's
voodoo.
what Michael experienced when he was sweeping the cabs, because the same thing happens in this recording environment. It's that same canvas idea.
But Michael
You've got
captured,
sonic space.
but you captured an air and a depth in these IRs.
And that's the magic of the IRs that he did, was he captured the space, not just the frequency.
Thanks. I think we talked about it a little bit. I think, you know, the cabs were great, and it was a beautiful day when this truck pulls up with like,
10 cabs.
Actually,
Special delivery.
Like, how many are coming? I think I'm almost out of space.
Yeah, because we originally
was-
talked about 2 or 3, and I sent him 6 or 8.
Yeah.
So what
amazing,
you
and they all
said-
sounded incredible.
So like that high watt was there, right?
A new Sound City, the vintage high watt, the fat bottom straight with P50s, the fat bottom straight with F70s, and the Deliverance with F70s, and the Ether cab.
The ether cab.
Yeah,
You know what? That ether cab sound, the IR you did,
that's nice.
secret weapon. Secret weapon.
Yeah, that's a very cool sounding cab. Very cool.
I mean the Sound City cabs and the Deliverance cab, like I know them well, and so I use them constantly. But man, that ether cabinet, well, I guess I know that really well too because I have an ether. But man, secret weapon for sure. So
Yeah.
I don't.
I think also the me coming from maybe the greenback and vintage 30 side, and then I think if you just put anyone with a microphone that has used a V30 for 100 years, and then you switch to the Fane, they go, what happened?
Yeah,
Good and bad. You're like, like all the colors inverted. And then
That's a great way of putting it, man.
And then once you switch from the Fane to the vintage 30, the same thing happens. It's a very funny scenario where you're like, it's a very different thing. But because I'm used to the certain sort of color, I don't, maybe perhaps I subconsciously pushed it somewhere into a middle ground on some of them. What I'm used to hearing or where I want it to go. But that the Fane is an awesome speaker. And this is kind of a I don't know, maybe backhand compliment. I kept thinking like, well, if I didn't have these IRs, I would definitely buy a cab full of Fanes, but kind of don't need to now.
Yeah. So. Well, the beauty of the way that they ended up was that if you want more muscle or less on the low end, you accomplish that by either setting the bottom voicing switch up or down,
or
and the same goes with the high frequency voicing. If it's a little bit too out front, you can back that off, or if it's not out front enough, you can bring it up. So you put the range of the sonic space of the IRs such that the voicing switches in the reactive load part are probably more effective than they
that's
would be on
very
some
interesting
cabs.
Because it's not worth getting into. We'll do a video about it. Well, I don't know if we'll do a video about it. But Michael, you did a thing that was very interesting where you took one of the I forget which IR it was, but we were kind of having, or you and Steve were having a discussion about Fanes versus Celestians or whatever. And you're like, oh, here's what I think, Michael, you did this. You went, oh, here's what you do. You take this particular IR and you bump these frequencies up, and boom, here's your vintage 30. You don't need a vintage 30 IR.
Yeah,
You
no,
just
that's right.
You're in that zone. Do you remember what it was? What you boosted?
Use probably like a dB.5 or something at like 3K, and then
On which IR? Do you remember?
I think it was one of the first two, because we kept going back and forth, not trying to figure out, like, is there one that's the best one? And I think you said, oh, I like this one, and so we shifted it
Was it
forward.
Fat Bottom? It was so funny because
Saying Fat Bottom, you did
Steve did it for me here. We were in the room and we were running through the PLIR, and he went, oh yeah, check this out. I was like, holy crap. Instant vintage 30.
And I think also, the thing about this is
Without
that
the constipated fighting frequencies in the mid-range.
I mean, it's such a good sounding speaker in amazing sounding cabs. But you're not limited to anything. So like you could get these big muscular, like the rich cabs that are built in, or you just go in the other output and you use your own IRs or whatever IR makes you happy.
Exactly.
Or you go through the analog one, or
Exactly.
Or you can
Because
still be running to your cabinet and use the microphone.
right, because this isn't like any sort of a we're not trying to like vintage 30s are great, Marshall cabinets are great, obviously we're not making that sort of argument. The idea here is that Fanes and Fryette cabs have been underrepresented in the IR, I don't know, availability space, and
Yeah,
now
they're
they're
different.
here and they're really well done and they're different. That's all we're talking about. And the idea is that, like Steve was saying, what would the point be of loading up the PLIR with the Fryette version of vintage 30s or greenbacks or whatever? I mean, there's so many different variances of those out there. Like, who cares? Right?
You could buy mine.
But
Absolutely.
one of the things about the power station that I've been having lots and lots of fun with over the years that it's been in existence is all the fun, different, crazy ways we found to figure out how to use it differently. How to tweak the tool to make a different tool out of it without modifying it. With just like when somebody says, you know what I really need to do? Well, you can do that. Like plugging the output into its own input. You can do that? Yeah, you can actually do that on this. Well, won't it catch on fire and flames come shooting? No, it won't do that. You just do this. And I was just listening to you talk, and I was thinking there's a couple of things. One is in the power load, the IRs, it's got a stereo effects loop and a headphone out. And nobody really wants, even with a good IR, nobody wants to listen to mono, dry headphones with a crank amp going through an IR.
No.
It's kind of painful. But what you do want to do is you want to hear yourself in a room, right? So that's why we have the stereo effects loop in the headphone amp, so that you can put a stereo reverb in there, and that's your room. And then so the IR feeds the stereo effects loop, which feeds the headphone amp. So that's independent of the rest of the thing, the way it works. And somebody said, yeah, that's really cool, but you can't run the analog cab. I really use the analog cab most of the time. So it's too bad that you can't run the analog cab into the headphone out. And I'm like, well, yeah, we knew that we were going to run up against that, but we made the decision because to not make the product too complicated and convoluted. We made it just so that the IR drives the headphone circuit. But from this person's information that he passed along, that what he would like to have happen, I looked at it and went, well, actually, you just take the analog 2 line out, which is the analog cap filter out. You take that out, plug it into the input of a reverb, a stereo reverb, and plug the reverb returns into the effects loop, the reverb right and left outputs into the effects loop returns, and now you've got the analog cab
Yeah.
through the headphones.
Yeah.
Damn.
So I was listening to you guys talking. I was just about the IRs and how the analog cab works, and it can be more expansive. And I was thinking, I think I have to try this, but I think that you can take the analog cab out and plug it into the line in. And I'm going to try this later, but I think that you can take the IR and feed it through the analog cab.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. I want to try
I'll
that.
have to figure out the way to do that. I
want to try
right
that
off the top of my head. I'm not exactly sure which method I would do, but I think it can do that.
I love that, and we got to talk about that. I want to acknowledge a couple people who are commenting here. Bear Got Fission, that's awesome. Mixing in the DAW, the vintage 30s with the Fane, and then mixing in the analog cab sim. Absolutely, man. Go nuts with that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm certainly going to do that. And then Tyler, you were talking about his statement is, but IRs aren't just all about frequency. I don't know how you make them, Michael. Like in a way, like it's easy to think of IR building as just like it's just like an EQ filter. Like you could almost like
but I think then there's a time component to it. So it's like that EQ in many slices over time, because you could create an IR of a reverb as well, or a room. So you're getting the frequency, but you're also getting this slice that comes out of the time.
Well, because it's a two-part process. First of all, you're sending a frequency sweep through the cabinet, and that frequency sweep is modified by the behavior of the speaker. And then you've got a microphone or a couple of microphones in front of the speaker, and they're establishing that time component that you're talking about. They're creating those convolutions on top of how the speaker is interpreting this basically unified frequency range, going from the top to the bottom of the frequency range, coming out of the speakers, going through a little bit of space, then hitting the microphone cartridges. If you got multiple microphones at different times, and if they're on different angles, then at different times at different angles, because there's reflections off the cone that are going different directions, and that's where the term convolution comes from, because when the sound is bouncing off of the cone at angles and meeting at different places, they're combing, and that combing is what the convolutions are, adding and subtracting frequencies in time.
Right, and let us not forget the grill cloth. I always think that's the big deal too, man.
It is.
You know?
Is that a pretty fair assessment of the way you understand it, Michael?
Yeah, and I think like if you take the timing component out of it, you're back to the analog cab sim.
Well, that's what we say about the analog cab
thank
sim.
you.
Is it can I get an IR without the mic? Well, if you take out the mic, you've turned off the IR.
Also, the grill cloth.
Right. But
you know what? Speaking of the grill cloth, the distance of I gotta go soon too, by the way, guys. But the distance from the speaker to your grill cloth seems further away than a typical 1960 Marshall cab, for instance.
That's interesting.
Actually, it depends on the cabinet. On the deliverance, and the Fane, it's a tiny bit, 1/8 of an inch maybe, 1/8 of an inch maybe farther away. On the fat bottom with the front mounted speakers, it's actually closer than a Marshall. Well,
there goes that theory. I thought they were further away.
It's about 1/2 an inch closer to the grill cloth. So yeah.
All right.
Didn't mean to pull the rug out from under you there, but I mean,
no,
it's an important point that you brought up.
Yeah.
And that is why those speakers are designed, those cabs are designed the way they are, to express the different behaviors of the speaker mounted on the back of the baffle or the front of the baffle.
Well, Michael, we kind of talked about this a little bit. I think you and Steve talked about it, and then I'm going to actually execute it. I want to come visit you and talk about the making of this stuff and do a little video about it.
Totally.
and so I'll hit you up this week, and maybe we can figure out how to schedule time to do that. So before you split, because I know you got to split, who's your biggest guitar influence? I think I know what it is, who he is, but I'm wondering what you'll say.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious what you'll say, actually. I would say for a while it was all the Steves.
Okay, that's who I was going to name, one of them.
Can you name 3?
Well, I can name 3, but from the videos that I've seen of yours, it's Roth era Vi, man. Like I
Yeah.
see that so much. Like like playing wise, but also tonally.
Yeah, I love like those 2 records would just bring me such joy. So the Steve Lukather is probably my biggest. Steve Stevens and Steve Morse, which I don't play anything like Steve Morse. I don't even know how to, but those are huge. And then
really
Zach Wilde,
interesting.
throw some Zach Wilde in there, and that's probably ballpark.
Man, I think tonally, I don't know, something about it, like, I don't know, maybe it's, I've seen you doing like the Budget Gem video, and like there's a lot of things where maybe you were showcasing that aspect of what you do. But I was like, oh man, I think I know what Michael was doing when he was 15.
Yeah,
Just like freaking out over those Roth era records.
yeah. Still, I mean, he's really hard to. His phrasing is so weird,
Yeah, it's
even
pretty
on that
goofball.
like mainstream rock stuff. It's wild.
Yeah,
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 super
he's
out
an
there,
alien. Yeah.
for
But
sure.
like tonally, it seems like that stuff was a touchstone for you.
Yeah, it makes me happy. 1980. It's like that 86 to 92.
Yeah.
That's my favorite stuff. When
So
like,
were you into the Whitesnake record that he was on?
yes, totally. I remember I waited till midnight to get that, and I just kept falling asleep all night long. I just rewind back to the beginning, start it again, fall asleep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Was first
you ever
concert
met
I
him?
ever saw.
Have you ever hung out with Steve?
No, never. I don't think I want to. I'm good.
I
I
think I
don't
know what
really
you
like.
mean.
I got to hang
You're
out with Lukather, and he was a gem. He was so lovely.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I've met other guys, and like, then it's hard to like. I like keeping the music detached. Music's mine. Let them be on their own.
Yeah, I get that. I remember the first time I bumped into Lukather was this is like guys who are watching, everybody who's watching who doesn't live in like a music center. Like I grew up basically in Denver or suburbs of Denver, and had my musician career there long before I moved to LA. I moved here, and you're just like, holy crap. Like when you start going out to different clubs, and you're like every other night you're bumping into people that you've listened to like your entire life. And I remember I don't know, the third time I was at the Baked Potato when I moved out here, and I just like I bumped into Steve Lukather. It's like, holy crap. He's just like, hey man, how you doing? Wow, this is super cool. So that kind of thing happens. You know, actually, did you play with John Avila? John.
Me? No.
I'm talking to Steve right now. From
Oh,
Oingo
sorry, I
Boingo,
can't-
bass player.
Oh, we're buddies, and he had a band that played in some of the clubs around the early '80s in a band called Food for Feet, and I had a band.
Yeah.
I had a band called the Pencils, and we played double gigs at Wong's and different places like that together. So we were buddies.
Well, Vi doesn't come out a ton in LA, but I remember John Avila, who I'm talking about, who's a bass player in Oingo Boingo. Incredible
Phenomenal
guy,
bass player, phenomenal singer,
just incredible human being.
super high energy.
He was telling me about just playing a stupid little gig at the Old Town Pub in Pasadena, where I've played a million times. And he's like, Vi came into the Old Town Pub, which is crazy to me. You saw me play at the Old
Yeah.
Town Pub.
Yeah.
And Vi walked in and saw John playing, and like, let me get your number. And that's where he got called, because John is on the Fire Garden record. He played on one or two tunes on that record. But that's what I know about Vi actually coming out to see people play. I don't think he does that a whole lot. So I think Luke comes out a little bit more often. You know, you can kind of bump into him in the wild. You know, Vi's not that guy so much, but
I
anyway,
have tons of stories, but we could go on all night. Before I go, I got to show Steve my laptop mount here that I'm using as my laptop stand.
Is that a 42 and a 2290?
Yes, yeah.
Yay! That's why your voice had such amazing delay tone on it tonight.
Yes, there you go. All right, guys, I got to roll. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so
on.
much
thanks
for
for hanging
coming
out
in.
with us.
I'll be in touch with you, and maybe we can get together this week.
Sounds great.
All right,
Talk to you
man.
boys later.
Thanks. Take care, man.
Yeah.
And it's just a schmucks.
I missed the significance of the 2290 and the.
You have one around here somewhere. It's probably
that
just sitting in a
was
pile.
it was just a shout out to fellow 2290 owners. Is that?
Well, the funny thing was, like, you weren't in the room when he was doing it, but he was saying, my laptop needs to be up higher. And he's like, let's grab a 2290. And he's like, oh, it's not quite high enough. Let's grab the PCM 42. Where's your 2290? It's in here somewhere, right?
Somewhere.
That's funny. Okay, so we got some questions up here. Let's see if we can answer them. Let's see. I'm slightly inebriated, so it's going to take me a second to make sense of what you guys are saying over here.
Well, Scott's asking, where's Nico-chan?
Oh, Nico-chan is actually Nico-chan.
We need Nico-chan to make a quick little guest appearance.
Calling Nico-chan.
Calling Nico-chan. We could have Nico-chan come in and just say hey.
All right. Well, let's put an APB out for Nico-chan, and we'll scour the comments for pertinent questions that you can answer, because I can't answer anything. Let's see. Oh, Bimo is drinking Ugadal tonight. My man. That's one of my favorite whiskeys of all time, my friend. Absolutely. And to me, it's actually probably the best bargain out there in single malt land. I noticed it's gone up about $10 a bottle out here recently, but still, man, you can't beat it. I know it's a no age statement whiskey, but oh man, that stuff is just one of my favorites. Oh, I think I saw Nico-chan. Let's see here. Nico-chan can come in while I'm scouring for questions. And Steve, you can drop a PLIR on the floor if you want. Let's see. Not a ton of questions here. Lots of cool comments, though.
I think there was a couple of questions about when the GPDI is happening, and the GPDI is happening. It's coming along.
I've seen it. I've heard it.
Other things needed to happen before we could complete the development of the updated GPDI. One of them was the whole IR system, because that's going to have the IRs built in. And the other one was an upgraded power supply, which is complete. And the other thing that needed to happen is just the world needed to stop going crazy for a while. And it almost started happening, but then it just like went crazy times 10. So, however, now that the PLIR manual is done and all that other backlog work is done on that, we have a chance to get back to the completion of the GPDR, which is still scheduled to happen this year. And so all of our development energy is going into that now. Nico-chan, yes.
Nico-chan! With Jack Daniels.
With her Jack Daniels.
What is it? Old number 7 or what is it called? Yeah, number 7.
Yeah, number 7, babe.
Number 7 tastes good. It is the most uncomplex whiskey on the market, but it just tastes good. You say, okay, I'm a fan. There's a question up here: is the headphone out
And
on
we
the
had,
power
yeah,
load?
that
the
was
IR?
earlier, and we had discussed that.
Okay, so we're good.
The headphone output is off of the IR, and I'm contemplating a way to patch the analog sim in there if need be.
Okay. David asks, when will IRs be available for purchase?
We'll have to discuss that the next episode because
Okay.
that's a project that we're talking with Michael about. And our primary focus was to get the PLIR shipped and going. And we've got other projects to address, one of them being the GPDI.
Okay.
Yes, that's coming. Do I know when? Not right at the moment, but yeah, that'll be coming down the pike.
Yeah. And that sounds awesome because, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in the bag that wasn't
There's other
released.
things that didn't, yeah, the ones that didn't exactly make the cut, not because they didn't sound good, but just because we had more than we needed.
Right, exactly. And I've heard them, and man, there's a lot more that's great and useful.
There's the vintage high watt cab is in there, and some other things.
That's right. Like the vintage high watt cap didn't make the cut at all, and it's killer.
Yeah, it's unusual sounding, but
Mhm.
it's
bitchin'
unusual sounding.
Yeah. Okay, regarding the self-attenuating of the PS100, does it produce the same frequencies? I'm assuming you mean as self-attenuating with the PS2.
Yeah, well, they're the same. They're the same, functionally the same product. The only difference is that the 100 has twice as much power as the 50. So the only difference in sound you hear is the sound of the PS2 reaching its headroom limit before the PS100. Now, Dave Friedman will tell you that the PS100 sounds more transparent. And that's true to the extent of Dave's experience with the Power Station because he had the PS1, as did Pete Thorne. They both had Power Station 1s. Right, Nick-chan? Right. And I tried to upgrade them to the PS2s, but they were both, oh, I like the PS1. I don't have any reason to change. And they're like that. Hey, it sounds great. Why do I need to mess with it?
Yeah, don't broke it.
And ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So they went along, and then when the PS100 came out, there had already been the PS1 to the PS2 to the PS2A, with the various incarnations and slight upgrades in the behavior of the reactive load. Not a big thing, but just subtle little things in the evolution of the reactive load portion of the Power Station. So by the time Dave and Pete had heard the PS100s, they hadn't heard the PS2A. So if they had, they probably wouldn't have said that the one sounds more transparent than the other, especially at the volumes that Pete normally uses it at, which is in his home studio for, doing his demos and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Get down on that bottle.
Oh, number 7. Let's go.
Yeah, right.
Let's go. Hey, Nico-chan, cheers, baby.
All right. That's that's my theory.
I've never thought to drink anything like that.
So, at the point below where the PS2 is starting to reach maximum power output and therefore output saturation, just below that threshold, they sound identical. So if you self-attenuate the PS100, you basically just have to crank the volume a little hotter to get it to do that. But then once you do that, it'll behave pretty much the same way as the PS2. Me personally, I think that I would prefer the PS2 as the self-attenuation unit just because you don't need to push it so hard. On the other hand,
interesting.
The last episode that we did with all of this stuff, we still came away with, at the volume that you actually play at, because now that you can play at sane, comfortable, and even quiet volumes with any one of these, they should more or less sound the same. But still, the hundreds have a little bit more of some little characteristic blip that we find ourselves attracted to.
Yeah.
So we like we like this little sort of sparkle of the Hiwatt DR103 and the Sound City Master 100, just a little bit more than the 50, because they have that little bit wider sort of sonic component. And
but then you go, but then it doesn't have the saturation. Like it
doesn't have quite
everything has an opportunity cost, right?
Right, exactly. Right. So there, and the same applies to the PS100.
I just think it's a lot. It's a lot. The differences are a lot more subtle when you're talking about power stations, because they're not the primary tonal generating devices, right?
It's like, it's not even butter versus margarine. It's like butter on French bread versus butter on sourdough bread or something like
Well,
that.
actually, we've learned that that's important.
Yeah,
I know
that's
about
right.
this, the Whole Foods sourdough. All right, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
I know for me, if I were going to buy one, I would buy, if I didn't have any of those tools, I would buy the PS100 because I want the full meal deal. I want to be at the top of the food chain.
I want the extra knobs I'm never going to use.
It's actually not the knobs. It's the power section.
Yep.
It just, I remember I used to live with a roommate who owned a 1973 Dodge Demon.
A Dodge Demon?
Do you know the Demon? It's not that widely known. Such a badass Mopar car. It actually had a demon, like a factory Demon logo.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
It's like white and orange.
It wasn't the. It wasn't the spinning demon on the Roadrunner.
No.
Wasn't that
the Dodge Demon? And Chris Brandt, if you're out there somewhere, shout out to you. He had the Dodge Demon, and like a lot of Mopars from the era, like you sit in it, and it's like the bench seat. It's like it's like sitting on your couch, your grandma's couch. It's the most comfortable thing you've ever sat in, and you can like tool around town, and it's just a grocery getter. Like you don't have to do anything crazy with it. But oh my God, should you press your foot down, like whoo,
that 500 cubic inches come into full?
Yeah, absolutely. The torque is it's a beautiful thing to behold, and it's one of those things like life is hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Life is hard. And walking around with this cerebral cortex that's constantly identifying problems and issues, like we have to find something to occupy our minds to keep us from going crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like deciding what we're going to pay attention to. Like we're all, like there's no such thing as having a life without problems. So it's like looking to identify like what's a better quality problem, right? Mm-hmm. And if we don't choose what to focus on, like we kind of drift to focusing on like maybe lesser quality things. Mm. I've been drinking, so I don't know where I'm going with this.
You do
my
know where
point,
you're going with it? You don't know
I don't know where I'm going with this. But the idea here is like we have to have stupid things to fixate on or we'll go nuts. So like it's like, hey man, do I want to drive? Well, I'm about to make a point that I would refute because I actually like Hondas and Toyotas and cars like that. Mm-hmm. I actually drive a Toyota and they're wonderful, but it's kind of like, would I want to have the little grocery getter with no,
Look,
No
if some-
guts behind it, or if I could choose, right? It's like, yeah, you can go get your groceries in the Dodge Demon, and you can drive it like a grandma car.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting at that stoplight
Well,
and you want to blow the next car off the line, the Dodge Demon's going to get it done. And the PS100 is a different animal
yeah. Well,
than the PS2.
as somebody that used to own a mid '70s Mercury Montego with a 450 V8 in it, that had the rear door that opened 5 different ways, opened sideways, it opened down like a tailgate, it opened sideways like a door, had the electric window in it, and the,
You just said 450. That's all I needed to
and
hear.
the back seat that you could put 3 kids in the back seat.
I don't
facing
care
the
about
back
that.
of the car.
450.
But you could put a lot of gear in there. But the thing that I really liked about it, besides the fact that it only cost me $200,
Wow.
it cost me $200, and I drove it to a gig in San Diego, and I got run over by a San Diego cop car in one of those beach 4-wheeler cars because a cop was chasing a car that blew a red light, and he did a hard right turn to go after a guy that blew a red light. He didn't look. He was not.
Okay, so when you say run over, what does that really mean?
He was in the second lane from the curb, and I was in the curb lane, and he didn't see me. He took a hard right to go after the guy that blew the light and drove right over the hood of my car.
He drove over.
Over
You're not
the hood.
exaggerating.
I'm
He
not
drove
exaggerating. Over the
hood.
hood of the car. He drove up and over the hood of my car.
Okay.
And then he realized that there was a car there.
Then what happened?
He hauled off down the street to go after the guy that ran the red light, and then realized, oh shit, I just ran over a civilian's car. So he radioed somebody to go after the guy that blew the light and gave him their license plate and stopped and came back.
What a gentleman.
I had pulled over. Actually, I thought, I'm going after this guy because I had this
Because I got 450, man.
450. Now, this is a car that I would party in. And when I would go home from Hollywood,
I know what this thing is capable
I
of.
lived in the valley, and I was partying in Hollywood, and I would stop. I would start at the bottom of Laurel Canyon Boulevard, heading towards the valley.
Yeah.
I would floor that thing, and I would keep it floored all the way to the top up to Mulholland Drive to see if I could control the car with my foot all the way on the floor, all the way up from Sunset to Mulholland Drive.
That's why you're my friend, because you do shit like that.
Yeah, and so I was very comfortable with driving the car like that. It had superpower steering. You would just sit back and do this with a big giant steering wheel.
Right, in the bench seat,
So-
it just feels like
right.
you're chilling
So
on
I'm
a
in
Sunday
Sa-
afternoon.
And if Trace is still here, Trace Harrell, the guy he was on here in the chat stream a while ago. He was with me. We were doing a gig in San Diego, and we had gone after the gig. We went to the liquor store and got 2 grocery bags full of beers, and we were heading back to our hotel. And this cop drove over me, and I went, and then he took off. And he goes, "That guy's not going to get away with this." And I stepped on the gas and went screaming around the corner after him.
I'm going to pursue the cop.
I'm going to pursue the cop, and Trace is going, by the way, we're probably way over 0.08, and we've got 2 grocery bags of beers in the car. And I went, oh, shit. And I stopped the car, and the cop stopped. And I realized that I had an expired driver's license,
Oh, this gets
and
better.
my tags were expired, too. So when the cop was walking towards us, Trace and I switched places because he had a valid driver's license.
You guys.
And we thought, he
Nincompoops.
definitely saw that, right? So he comes up to the car, and Trace presses a button because the power window's, and the cop puts his hands on the door like this, and he looks at us, and he goes, he looks again, and it's grocery bag beers, and he goes, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I did. Starts apologizing profusely. I called the supervisor. He's on his way here. And we're like going, this is going to escalate. And so we wait and wait and wait. And all of a sudden, 5 more cops screaming to the scene.
This is an incident.
And we're like, okay, we're all going to jail. No problem.
Yeah.
And so the supervisor comes and he asks me a couple of questions, and he asks Trace a couple of questions, and they go back and they have this 6-cop huddle at a Jack in the Box parking lot. And then finally, the supervisor comes over and he goes, "Okay, well, we've discussed this and we've come to the conclusion of it's our fault."
Yeah,
They spent 20 minutes
kind of is.
trying to figure out what
One car drives over another.
what the story was going to be, and the big tire tracks over the hood of my car, and their conclusion was it's our fault.
You were on top of my car. I did not place myself underneath your car.
So, but that was a great car. That car was just super powerful. It was great. And by the way, it ended up being a free car because I filed a claim with the city of San Diego, and I got 2 letters back from them. One letter said this.
I want a free car.
One letter was a skinny one, and the other one was a thick one. So I opened the skinny one first, and it said, "We have determined that the value of your car is $700, and we're going to send you a check for $700, and you're going to drop.
And you paid $200 for it.
And you're going to drop the claim. If you do not want to drop the claim, read the next letter that you will receive." And
Thick one.
I opened the big thick one, and it's a whole thing where they've established its complete denial that it ever happened, and that they were going to fight me in court, and that they were going to arrest me for driving without a license and with expired tags and all of. They were going to throw the book at me. So
That's
take
the post-guilt
$700,
version. Yeah.
or we're going to make your life miserable. I went, "I'll take the $7." So I took the $700, and then I sold the car for $200. And so I ended up getting the car for free, and I made $900.
Oh my God.
And I had this story to tell.
Wow.
So,
2
what does
months
that
ago.
got to do with expensive sending 412 cabs? Everything and nothing.
So 2 months ago, I had the experience, and actually I've been so busy, I haven't got it repaired yet. I was in 4-lane on Sunset Boulevard. I come to a stoplight, and I'm in the left-hand lane, and this red Prius decides, as the light is turning red, like I'm pulling up, I'm stopping, the red Prius decides, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a U-turn from the right-hand lane all the way across here as the light is red." And she does not see me. And she drags her entire, and I'm watching this like, "Oh, you're not going to do this. You're not. Are you really going to do this?" Because I'm stopped. I can't do anything. Yes, she's going to do this. She drags the entire side of her car across my front bumper. And so my front bumper is still a mess, and I've been so busy and I haven't been able to get it fixed. But
should we check the remaining comments there's some new comments there that we're not seeing?
yeah, I know, but I wanted to throw this up. I'm so drinky. What about the idea of putting an IR that's only the mic?
Yeah, we had actually talked about that.
Okay, so we're kind of solid on that.
That's an interesting concept, and that needs to be fleshed out a little bit. But the concept is that in an IR, the mic and the speaker are integral, and one of them does not work without the other. So, but that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to work around these little technical challenges. So,
okay, I'm going to throw this up for a second. Scott, I would love to hear that too, but I just don't think I would sound as good as Randy. I'm going to say this just because it's fun. There's that one, I mean, you can find it here on YouTube. There's Ozzy playing that one, I forget where it is. It's just this small TV studio, one stop on the tour of, damn it. I would remember it if I hadn't been drinking. But yeah, he's playing those cabinets with the Altec Lansings in there, and he just sounds incredible. Like light years beyond anything that happened on the 2 records that he was on. In just stupid tone, just amp blowing up tone. So that would be fun, but I don't think that I could get that sound out of it, although it would be fun to have IRs like that. Okay, man, I'm going slow because I've been drinking and I didn't eat anything all day.
Yeah, well, we're gonna pack it in a minute, and we're gonna go grab some food because
Food would be good.
we're both pretty hungry.
Okay, so I thought the reason the PS. Okay, you want to take a shot at this?
I thought the reason the
PS
PS was the best sounding attenuator is because it used power tubes. How is the PLIR accomplished the attenuation? Well, the PLIR is not an attenuator; it's a load. It's just the reactive load part feeding an IR that you plug directly into a DAW. It's not an attenuator. That's the difference. So that's where you're getting caught up is the power station is attenuator, and what makes it sound better than other attenuators is that the tube power amp is interacting with the speaker cabinet that it's driving, even though it's at lower volume. The PLIR is not driving a speaker cabinet or adjusting the volume of the speaker cabinet, so it doesn't need the tube power amp. So the reactive load in the power station and the PLIR are the same load, and they are good sounding loads, and they have a distinct reactive signature. I hate to say that they sound a certain way because they don't actually sound. They make your amp behave in such a way that it sounds. And they both products have that part. It's not an attenuator. That's why.
All right. I think that's it, guys. I think we went through everything.
Okay.
We will we can roll out here with the oh, I know what we can do. Why don't we play the little teaser music thing that I did to go out?
All right. Are we going to thank our guests for hanging out? And
Absolutely.
I think we want to get Nico-chan over here and wave goodbye to our friends. And thanks for hanging out, guys. And thanks for joining us with, thanks Michael Nielsen for making it an extra special event.
Michael's so great.
We'll have a lot of more craziness. Peace. Send thoughts of love and support to Ukraine. And think about a better world out there. Be nice and polite and helpful to all your friends. And even if they're not your friends,
and even people you disagree with, who have crappy opinions. Maybe I have crappy opinions.
They're having a bad day.
Be nice to me anyway.
You are.
Exactly. We all kind of suck, but we're all kind of lovable at the same time.
Be positive. Be kind. Be around in 2 weeks and hang out with us for more of this craziness.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Love you guys.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time.